No citizen is a second-class citizen in the city of Chicago. If my children are treated one way, every child is treated the same way.
Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel's emotional response this week failed to end protests over how he handled the police shooting of a black teenager. And we're back now with the panel. So let's start with a timeline of events in this case. On October 20th, 2014, Laquan McDonald is shot 16 times by a Chicago police officer. April 7th of this year, Emanuel is reelected. The next day, April 8th, city attorneys agree to a $5 million settlement with the family. November 24th, the city finally releases video of the shooting and charges police officer James Van Dyke with first-degree murder. Karl, emails show that the mayor's office knew about the possibility of a video in this case more than a year ago. So the question I have is, do you think Rahm Emanuel slowed this case down, slow-walked it, to get past the election?
Well, I don't know who slow-walked it, but yes, I think people said this would be explosive. It would be likely to damage his reelection chances, and somebody, I suspect it was not the mayor, but somebody said, let's slow roll it. Now he's at a point where he's lost the moral authority to govern the city. The question is, does he leave? I think it unlikely, because there's no mechanism to kick him out, and this now becomes a question of will. And if somebody has will, it is Rahm Emanuel.
Chuck, city officials fought for more than a year to keep this video away from the public, even after, as I point out in the timeline, they had paid a $5 million settlement to the family.
Well, having seen the video, I can understand why they'd want to keep it quiet, because it shows that their story was untrue, that police officers had basically lied. Some of them had lied in written reports, that there was a vast cover-up of this obviously unwarranted shooting, and that there's a rot in the police department. You know, Rahm Emanuel, I kind of agree with Karl. This wouldn't be one where necessarily we're ever going to find a smoking gun showing that Rahm ordered some sort of cover-up. But he presided over a government and a police department that covered up this horrible event. And I have to say, I think the people of Chicago have every right to be doing what they're doing right now, which is getting out in the streets, and so far peacefully, but very rowdy way, showing they're unhappy with that. And I don't know whether Rahm has to pay for it with his job or not, but the whole rest of his political career, whether as mayor or anything else, is going to be defined on how he makes this city better. And it's got a lot of other problems. Its educational system, its debt, its pensions, and everything else. And he's got a heavy load to lift.
You're being a little more gentle about Rahm Emanuel's involvement or lack of involvement in the decision to slow walk the release of this video. Neera, over the last year, Rahm Emanuel repeatedly said that this video had to be withheld from public view because there was a criminal investigation going on. He may get choked up now, but is he getting choked up about the case, or is he getting choked up about his political future?
Look, I think people have a right to be suspicious of this. I mean, it's a very damaging video. It was held for a very long time. I completely agree that the real issue here is not just the video itself or what happens on the video, but the number of police officers who obviously agreed to a particular story that turned out not to be true.
How about the fact that the mayor withheld or fought against releasing the video for a year, and just coincidentally, while he was running in a very tight race for re-election?
Absolutely, and I think that's why it's totally proper that there's a Department of Justice investigation. And I think if the Department of Justice shows that Rahm knew ahead about this video and held it for his political campaign to better his campaign, then I think then he should be held accountable for that. But I think that's why we have an investigation, because we actually want to know what the facts are. And I think that's why it's important that he's supporting this investigation, everyone else is, and I hope it is a speedy one. We should be able to determine this answer relatively quickly.
George.
Mr. Justice Lane says, the people of Chicago are right to be upset. The people of Chicago are part of the problem. Abuse of power and collapse of confidence in civic institutions is a natural consequence of prolonged one-party government. The last Republican mayor of Chicago was 1931. 84 years of one-party government, and this is what you get.
What is the connection, actually, between a police brutality case and one-party government?
A culture of cover-up, a culture of entitlement, a culture of prolonged sense of invulnerability. that's the consequence.
Well,
He was in a
ask
very
you-
tight
wait a second. Let me
re-election.
ask you, George, because as we've all found out this week, and much to my surprise, there is no mechanism to remove the mayor of the city of Chicago. Maybe part of this one-party culture that you're talking about. But one state representative who happens to be a Chicago Democrat has now filed a bill that would create a recall system for the mayor. As somebody, lifelong Illinois, how do you pronounce it, Illinoisian, do you think that he survives?
I think he probably will. It's not clear to me that the Democratic-controlled, heavily controlled legislature would pass it. It's not even clear to me that the governor, Rahm, the Republican governor of Illinois, would sign it, because he is counting on, for extraordinarily complicated structural reforms that Illinois needs, an alliance with his friend, and he is a friend, Rahm Emanuel.
And all those structural reforms have been cast into limbo by this.
Exactly.